so happy we alive.
Good evening and welcome to Louisville Late Night. This evening we're in beautiful San Francisco and we're here attending the National Normal Conference at the lovely Crown Plaza Hotel. And this evening I'm especially privileged to have with us a very rare individual, a scholar, Dr. John Morgan, who has actively been involved with the medical marijuana movement for many years now. And Dr. Morgan is a professor of pharmacology.
That's right.
At New York
City University of
New York City University. And John, may I refer to you as John?
Sure, please.
John has for many years traveled throughout the United States and helped many individuals who have been unfortunate victims of our criminal justice system, and has also spent extensive time educating medical students and others concerning the positive benefits of marijuana. In addition to this, John has written a landmark book in conjunction with Dr. Lynn Zimmer entitled Marijuana Myths, Marijuana Facts. And without further ado, I would like to introduce Dr. John Morgan to you and say, John, how's it going here in San Francisco?
Yeah, just like you, I'm very happy to be in San Francisco. I haven't been here for a long time, and I was very pleased when Normal decided to come to the West Coast, as they do every now and then for the annual Normal meeting.
Yeah, usually it's in Washington, D.C.,
Yeah,
it seems like.
Keith Stropp, the director of Normal, talked about the fact that it costs a lot of money to fly the staff out here, but still it's worth it. And the attendance is very good. There are over 400 people registered for the conference here in San Francisco.
Great. Well, there's been a lot going on recently, but I'd like to go back a few years and ask you, how many years have you been involved with the medical marijuana issue?
Well, a long time.
And how did you get into it?
Well, I'm fond of telling people that many people came to the issue of medical marijuana because of an interest in marijuana policy and realizing that medical marijuana was an important issue and could be utilized to help convince people that our arrest policy was not a good one, and in part there's been a political, not a cynical political position, but if we can make medical marijuana legal, maybe we can make marijuana legal in general. When I was in medical school, I became interested in the claims that marijuana had medicinal benefits, and I can still recall when I was a senior resident that the people on the staff knew that I had an interest in marijuana, and I did a grand rounds in which I talked about medical marijuana. And I kind of cite that almost as, in the late 1960s is my introduction to the claims that marijuana had medicinal benefits. And the federal government was quite interested in it. During the 1970s, there were 2 edited texts paid for mostly by federal research money, in which people talked about glaucoma and talked about the obvious anti-nauseant properties. And in the 1970s, I was quite involved in talking to people as an educator, and not so much as an activist, about the fact it was quite clear that delta-9 THC had medicinal properties. And so when it sort of lapsed over into becoming a political issue, I was happy to be involved. But I started talking about it because less an interest in marijuana and less of an interest in marijuana politics as an interest in medicinal marijuana. So I sometimes think that that's probably where I started. I actually became very much an activist over the urine testing issues. As I mentioned to people today, I learned about marijuana politics and learned about the drug war because of my opposition to the imposition to people without any obvious problems, people who didn't show that they were impaired, but that they had to be tested as a part of going to work. So that's what really drew me into an activist role, and then everything sort of came together. Medicinal marijuana, marijuana reform, the harm reduction issues, trying to prevent the widespread placement of urine testing, and I'm fond of also saying that this made me a political person again. This was an area in which I was happy to work as a politician as well as a scholar.
So actually, it was kind of a human rights or a civil rights issue that related to your involvement.
Yeah, it seemed to me that although I'm not a lawyer nor a constitutional scholar, it seemed quite clear to me that when people began saying that you had to be urine tested, particularly in random testing when there was no reason to believe that you were impaired, that the idea was clearly unconstitutional. There's a Fourth Amendment which says we should be free from search and seizure unless there's some kind of due cause, some kind of reasonable suspicion that you are a drug user. And so I began, although many of the arguments revolved around the technical issues, how good was urine testing, how common were false positives, did we need to confirm who was going to collect the urine. There were lots of technical issues, but the real issue was what right did society have, even through the workplace as opposed to the federal workplace, to impose a seizure and a search on the basis of no suspicions at all, but that we had an enormous drug problem. So yeah, my initiation into activism was over the politics of urine testing.
Mm-hmm. And I'm curious, right at this time, with after 9/11 and the war on terror, how has that impacted on this whole thing?
It's hard to say. I have a number of friends who were very much committed to the idea that the war on terrorism was going to require the kinds of resources, and people would begin to neglect the drug war. In fact, I have a very good friend who says we're stopping the era of war on drugs and entering the war on anthrax. Now, it turns out that that's not really true. What's happened with the increasing surveillance at the borders, we're not arresting terrorists, we're arresting people who are holding drugs. And in fact, probably the number of seizures and number of arrests since 9/11 have gone up. And there's also the sort of talk about how 9/11 has precipitated more illegal drug use because of people's terrors and anxiety. But I'm afraid the war on drugs is not going to stop because of a necessity to try to ferret out the terrorists, and things are actually going to become worse. In fact, as Ethan said today, that the dark side of American totalitarian urges is being expressed still, chiefly against marijuana users in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me like as physicians, we're in a situation that's not unlike the time of Galileo and the Pope, when Galileo was saying the world's round and the Pope's saying the world's flat. And more than ever, we need to help distinguish real crime from pseudo-crime.
Yeah.
Real illness from pseudo-illness, from made up drug addiction type of
making up. I have again many associates who are happy to sort of accept the idea that at least some sorts of drug use are illness, and therefore we have the right to move against people because of their illnesses. And this becomes an excuse, a lever on whatever you want to move. And physicians should resist being medical policy. They should resist serving the state in any part of a war on drugs. One of the things that I've been concerned with for a number of years now, there are somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000 physicians in the United States making a portion or even all of their living as medical review officers. That is, they work for companies who do drug testing, and they review the final test. And this is supposed to be a protection for individuals, but what it truly means is